There are two types of people in the world, people who are Team Kim and good people. I said what I said. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I am doing another masculine feminine energy analysis of the Kardashians. I have a video from a few months ago where I talked about the Kardashians, primarily about Kris Jenner as the leader of the family in terms of masculine feminine energies and how her relationships, her energies have kind of affected all of her kids. And the primary focus of that video was on kind of the Kardashians' rise to fame and their early years of fame. And when I filmed that video, I had not watched any of the seasons of the Kardashians on Hulu, but I actually watched the first 3 seasons and actually episode 1 of the 4th season because that's all that's been released as of filming this. Probably by the time it's up and by the time you watch it, there may be more episodes. And if you'd like me to do a recap at the end of season 4, let me know. But I wanted to make this video as kind of like an update to my original Kardashian video because after watching the first 3 seasons, there were a lot about their kind of like current relationships and dynamic that I really wanted to touch on. So none of this is really gonna negate the stuff I talked about in the last video. It's just gonna add to it. Few things before I get into this video. One thing are some actual like channel updates. So TikTok has actually permanently banned my original TikTok account. So if you are on TikTok or you followed me on TikTok, my original account is no longer there. I have a new account, so if you'd like to follow my new account, I would love for you to follow me there because I'm trying to build up my new account. I will leave the link in the description box. Unfortunately, the reason for the ban was actually I got hit with an overwhelming number of copyright strikes. I had no warning, and they won't actually even tell me which specific videos are the ones that they're striking, but there were so many of them, and in order to appeal them, I'd have to appeal each one individually. I have a feeling, I don't know this for sure, but I've been getting the sense that TikTok is trying to work towards being a little bit more like YouTube and possibly monetizing their videos. And I think as a result, they're gonna have to crack down a lot more on copyright stuff. Even though everything I use in my videos is all fair use, it's something I'm making a critique about. To fight every single one of them would just take me forever. And if it was YouTube, I probably would fight it because I've had this YouTube channel for so long. With TikTok, it just, as much as I was disappointed to see my TikTok taken down, it wasn't gonna be worth the fight for me. Especially because the claims were coming against, you know, big companies like Warner Brothers and things like that. I have a feeling you're gonna see more people having issues with that because I do think TikTok is gonna start cracking down on that stuff. Because of that, I'm not gonna be able to do actual individual scene breakdowns. I don't know if I'm still gonna do like regular film breakdowns on my YouTube channel. I'm debating about that, but I won't be able to actually use clips and show individual scenes. I know that's disappointing because a lot of you request a lot of scenes. I know a lot of you have told me that the scene breakdowns that I do are really helpful. I do see other people that do those scene breakdowns, but none of them do as many as I do and as in-depth a breakdown as I do. And there's probably a reason why I'm the only one that was doing that. It's probably because most people didn't want to risk doing that because of potentially having their entire accounts taken down. So I'm kind of revamping what I'm doing. I'm gonna try to do more, I don't know, pop culture or different breakdowns of things maybe that are things people can watch on their own, and I'll just critique them here. Maybe more like actual topics. I have some topics that some of you have requested, more topic videos and stuff, and I'm gonna have to transition out of doing film breakdowns specifically because I really can't do the scenes individually. This literally just happened yesterday, so I don't exactly have it all planned out. So getting into the Kardashians, as I said, my original video, which if you want more detail on the Kardashians, you can go back and watch. I focus a lot more on Kris Jenner and the family in general, and a little bit more of what I knew about them from the original Keeping Up with the Kardashians show. This video is primarily going to focus on them more currently and on like the first 3 seasons primarily and a smidge of the 4th season of their Kardashian show on Hulu. I know the Kardashians are kind of like a love-hate kind of a thing. I will admit, this is like my one reality show guilty pleasure. I don't watch a lot of reality TV. I've actually like never watched an episode of the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise like ever. And I don't really have any interest to. I don't watch the Real Housewives shows. Like, The Kardashians are kind of my only reality show guilty pleasure. Actually, my favorite reality show is actually The Girls Next Door, and I kind of started watching the Kardashians because they usually came on like around the same time as The Girls Next Door, and so I kind of got into watching that on E! And I'm actually obsessed. If any of you are like Girls Next Door fans, I'm obsessed with Holly and Bridget's podcast, The Girls Next Level, where they like break down all of the like episodes of The Girls Next Door. I'm like obsessed with that. So that's just a side note. But the Kardashians are really my only reality show guilty pleasure, and I really had not been keeping up with them since they stopped being Keeping Up with the Kardashians. But I decided to dive in and marathon through the first 3 seasons, and I had a lot of thoughts on stuff that was going on, and I really wanted to use some individual scenes to demonstrate to you some of the stuff I'm talking about, but I'm not gonna be able to do that now. So I'm just gonna talk you through some of the stuff. Little disclaimer, as I said in my original video, I really wanna be mindful of the fact that I'm talking about real life people. Whether or not their life that is presented to us in the reality show and on social media and stuff is real or not, totally up for interpretation. I don't know any of these people personally, and nothing that I say in this video is ever meant to be a personal attack on anybody. I'm literally basing everything I talk about in this video on their public persona. So I'm gonna reference them as their public persona. I don't know what they're really like. I'm sure most people watching probably don't really know what they're actually like in real life either. None of this is ever meant to be an attack on them personally. It's solely based on what they show us in the media, whether it be social media or their reality TV or things like that. I've also seen a lot of people talk about the Kardashians in terms of narcissism, and I'm gonna touch on that a little bit, but my main focus is actually on masculine and feminine energies. That's the main focus of kind of my analysis. If you're not familiar with what I mean by masculine and feminine energies, masculine and feminine energies are energies that live within all of us. We all contain both energies, but we have a core energy that's the one we're most ourselves in. That energy often links up with our gender. It doesn't have to, but it very often does. So typically most women are going to be feminine at their core, and most men are typically going to be masculine at their core. We all contain both. So the ideal situation would be for someone who is feminine at their core to be primarily in their feminine energy, and then have access to their masculine energy that they can use when they need to. And for someone who is masculine at their core to be primarily in their masculine energy but have access to their feminine energy when it's needed. That's the ideal way to have balance. Oftentimes balance gets misinterpreted as equal parts of both, and it's actually balance for most people is going to be being in your natural core energy but having access to a healthy version of the opposite energy. And statistically speaking, most women are feminine at their core and most men are masculine at their core. There's a small number of people who are evenly balanced. That's very rare though. And you do find some people whose energy doesn't link up with their gender. Those are exceptions, they're rare exceptions. And more often than not, if someone is, say, a woman who feels very masculine and is in her masculine all the time, it's usually because she has some kind of a blockage to her feminine energy. And on the flip side, most men that are living from their feminine energy, it's usually because they haven't learned how to step into their masculine energy yet. That's just a brief summary. I have a lot of videos talking about this much deeper. So just so you guys kind of know like where I'm coming from when I actually analyze the show. I'm not going to touch on Kris Jenner too much, primarily because I dove into her a lot in the first video. So if you want to know more about Kris Jenner, watch the original Kardashian video that I did. Kendall and Kylie, I'm just going to touch on just briefly because I also don't feel like they're the main characters on the show. It's hard for me to really know if it's just that they really don't want to be a part of the show. They kind of just show up because they feel like they have to, or what the deal is. I don't really know. I mean, I know for the two of them, because they were so young when this started, they didn't really choose this life. They really were born into it. So they're hard to read, I feel like. I also feel like the storylines that they have where they're trying to put Kendall and Kylie together feel very forced. Like they really wouldn't be hanging out and they really wouldn't be friends, but the show wants to put them together because they're in similar age groups and they're kind of trying to get them as like a team. I almost feel like they're setting them up to be the next Kourtney and Kim. Because I feel like there's a lot of aspects of Kendall that remind me a bit of Kourtney and a lot of aspects of Kylie that remind me of Kim. Not that they're the same person necessarily or have the exact same personalities, but I can see where the dynamic between sisters could potentially turn out the same way. Like they could end up being the Kourtney and Kim that we debate about now in 10 years or something. The main note that I want to make about Kylie in particular is there was a lot of buildup that she was gonna like confront her sisters about the unrealistic beauty standards that they've been setting. And they built that up so much, and it was hugely disappointing, at least for me. I know it was still talked about a lot because she did reveal a lot of things that she hadn't revealed before, and I think also kept a lot of things secret that she still isn't talking about. And I know that there's a lot of people who are gonna argue that she doesn't have to talk about these things. I would argue that if your entire brand is essentially setting a beauty standard, then you should be required to have full disclosure about how you got to that beauty standard. Because in my opinion, it's manipulative for you not to. For you to act as if you're just naturally, you've naturally started to look like you look now when you've actually done a lot of things to yourself. Because it sets other people up to believe that they can achieve the results that you've achieved by doing the things that you're doing publicly, but they can't because they don't know about all the things you're doing privately, if that makes any sense. The conversation was a bit of a letdown. She had the conversation primarily with Kourtney and Khloe, not Kim, conveniently. And they did talk about it, and Kylie did talk about how now she sees her daughter and she sees so much of herself as a child in her daughter, and she doesn't want her daughter to grow up thinking that there's something wrong with the way she looks, which I think is a common thing. I think oftentimes, you know, women that have a lot of deep insecurities and feel really insecure about their looks, when they have a child who looks like them, they can shift perspective. So this is not an unusual thing for Kylie to be thinking. However, she hasn't changed anything. Like, she's still doing all the same things, and she's still keeping up a certain image and not really changing anything. So like, she had the conversation and said she was concerned about it, but like nothing else has happened. So to me, that felt very hypocritical, and also felt a little bit like she was just having this conversation because she knew it would get attention. She says she's never had anything surgically done to her face. She's only used fillers. I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not that's possible, or whether, you know, it's a lie. I'm not there, I don't know. I think it's highly unlikely, but we don't really know. She did also confess to having a boob job, and apparently there's a lot of overlap from when she was actually promoting a push-up bra and when she had a boob job, and she was claiming that this push-up bra she was promoting, and this was many, many years ago, she was making it seem like it was the push-up bra that gave her the nice boobs or whatever, and then it wasn't actually, that it was actually surgery. And she's saying she regrets it now. She hasn't mentioned anything else, although it's very, very obvious that she's obviously had liposuction in her waist, and she's had some kind of lower body enhancement. I know there's people out there that are going to argue that there are people that have her shape naturally, and there probably are, but that's incredibly uncommon. And the fact that we've literally seen Kylie grow up, I can tell you, I did not wake up one day and all of a sudden have boobs. Women don't wake up one day and all of a sudden have hips and a huge butt. That doesn't happen like that. You know, I know from my own experience, like, this here started very young. And it started early on. And of course, you know, as you get older and as you hit puberty, things do start developing, but it doesn't happen overnight. When it happens overnight, where it's like, okay, one day you literally had like a straight up and down, like no hips, no waistline, and then the next day you have this like dramatic waist and this huge butt and hips, that's surgery. That does not happen naturally. Nature doesn't do that. That's not how puberty works, okay? You know, it's her right to do what she wants with her body. It's her right to do what she wants with her money. That said, the fact that she is misleading so many young people, because her audience is so young, into thinking that you can achieve the look that she has with diet and exercise, or with, you know, cosmetics or something like that, is just incredibly, incredibly misleading. And you know, we know that the Kardashians do this. The thing is, I hear a lot of people online that will be like, well, doesn't everybody know that the Kardashians are doing this? Yeah, most adults know, but young girls don't always know. You know, I mean, I look at, you know, how I was when I was, you know, a teenager, and the standards of beauty that were around when I was a teenager. There was no disclosure. I didn't know how people were getting this way. I used to follow every, like, you know, health, fitness, whatever, like diet plan the celebrity was doing and stuff. And it's like, I didn't get those results because what they were saying they were doing wasn't really what they were doing. But it encourages, especially young girls, just start following what they're doing, and it can lead people down a really dangerous path. And I'm gonna do some other videos about body image and body confidence because I've had a lot of requests on that, so I'm gonna dive into that more. But I'm just gonna say, as far as masculine feminine energies go, it's hard to know what Kylie is specifically. The need for perfection and this obsessive need to perfect your body with fillers, surgeries, things like that, is masculine. The need for perfection, this idea of like physical perfection, is a masculine ideal. Perfectionism is masculine. I realize that there's probably outside pressure on her to look this way, but her choosing to do this stuff is coming from a very masculine place, because the feminine is nature. So for one, the feminine is embracing nature. It's embracing what nature is bringing in, and nature is not perfect. But yet nature is beautiful. You can see a whole garden full of flowers, and none of them are going to be absolutely physically perfect. Every single one of them is going to have something that would be perceived as a flaw, because that's what happens in nature. But yet they're all beautiful. And part of the reason they're all beautiful is because they're not all just carbon copies of each other. That's one of the things that I really want women to understand, is that getting a boob job so that you have a fuller chest, or getting, you know, some kind of butt or hip enhancement in some way, because I know there's different ways you can do that, to give yourself a more quote-unquote feminine look, does not make you more feminine. It has nothing to do with your feminine energy at all. The constant quest for physical perfection is a masculine idea. If you're constantly getting surgeries, you're getting enhancements or things like that to constantly make yourself into some kind of physical perfection, it's coming from a masculine place. Even if it is making your body or your look more feminine, or the way society deems it as feminine, it's coming from a masculine place. The feminine is not constantly trying to put themselves into this space of physical perfection. So I'm not necessarily saying that Kylie is masculine, because I don't think we get enough of her to really make an assumption about what her life is like, because you really just see her kind of showing up, interacting with people, and then leaving, so you don't really know if you're getting the real her or not. However, the way she's treating her body in this like quest for perfection, even though she's trying to fit this kind of like feminine beauty ideal, it's very masculine. Kendall's interesting because she's very polarizing online. I've been seeing so much stuff where people are so weird about Kendall, and you know, some people love her, some people really hate her. I don't really feel like you get enough of her on the show to really make any kind of assumption about her. The way she presents herself on the show, to me, is very balanced, in a sense that she's kind of equal parts masculine and equal parts feminine, which for most people is not a healthy balance. Most people are going to need to be more of one than the other in order to really be in alignment for themselves. She seems to be very balanced in the middle, as far as like she's masculine in a lot of ways and feminine in a lot of ways, and she to me she seems very neutral. And when people are neutral like that, they tend to feel very bland, and I'm not saying that she's a bland person, but that's the way she comes across, at least on the show for me. She has a great connection with animals and nature, so you know, that feels very feminine. She also tends to feel very sort of structured and serious and directional. That feels very masculine. Again, she seems very neutral, and I don't know if this is just because she's not totally comfortable on camera, so she's trying to keep herself neutral. It's hard to know. I talked about this in the original video, but I'm going to touch on this again because it's a really important note. Kendall has discussed having debilitating anxiety. This isn't universal, and I'm not trying to detract from any kind of like chemical imbalances or things like that. However, from an energetic perspective, more often than not, if someone is feminine at their core, but they are being forced to live in a very masculine world or from a very masculine place, they typically will start showing signs of anxiety. If someone is masculine at their core and they really are constantly using their feminine energy all the time and not tapping into their masculine at all, they will likely start experiencing depression. Generally speaking, anxiety is a feminine being trying to live from a masculine place, and depression is a masculine being trying to live from a feminine place. That's why you tend to, in general, see in our society so many women suffering from anxiety and so many men suffering from depression. If a man is suffering from depression, more often than not, he's too much in his feminine, he needs to connect to his masculine. If a woman is in anxiety, typically she's living too much more masculine, she needs to connect to her feminine. I know that that is simplifying a much broader topic, because it's like if you're living from those places, it's probably because you don't know how to get into your natural core energy. It's probably because you have blockages or circumstances in your life. Like, I'm not saying that that's an easy fix, but that's the direction you probably want to go in, because you tend to see more anxiety in feminine women who are trying to be masculine, and you tend to see more depression in masculine men who are trying to be more feminine, or being forced to be more feminine, or don't know how to connect to their masculine. So for Kendall, the fact that she is experiencing debilitating anxiety is usually a sign that she's actually very feminine at her core, but she's living in a very masculine world, which, you know, the Kardashian world itself is very masculine. Also, Kendall, the modeling world, I know people think of modeling as being very like feminine because it's fashion and style and stuff, but the actual world itself, because it's got so much structure, it's pressure for perfection, it's, you know, it is a very masculine world. It's an industry. It's a business industry. I mean, even though it's fashion and style, so there are some like girly aspects to it, the fashion industry itself, the modeling industry, is a very masculine structured world. So the fact that Kendall is dealing with so much anxiety is probably a sign that she's out of alignment and that she's not really in her feminine energy, because the life that she's living is not letting her be in her feminine energy. So Khloe and Kim, there's a lot of overlap in the two of them, but they're not the same person. They're still very different. Some of the overlap is they both refuse to face their feelings. They are both suppress their feelings and emotions so deep, it's insane. I don't know if it's just because the cameras are on them. I cannot imagine. I feel like both of them are gonna end up with really severe health problems in some way, shape, or form, because the level of suppression of what they're dealing with is so deep. I will point out, and I know there have been different theories as to Khloe, and did she get that? I don't know what it's called. It's like a fat removal that you get in your face. And she did have surgery because she supposedly had a tumor in her face, and there's been rumors as to whether or not that was true, or whether, whatever. I'm gonna base it on the fact that on the show it said it was true, and the fact that she had the surgery just on one side, not both sides. So I don't know if she actually had that, the fat removal procedure that's very popular in Hollywood now. But the fact that she had a tumor going on in her face, very close to her mouth, this area, your mouth, your throat, like this general area right here, is your throat chakra. Typically, as someone who's had a ton of throat chakra issues over the years and has a ton of issues with like jaw pain, neck pain, things like that, I can tell you that anything that happens typically in like this general area is usually a sign that you're suppressing things that you're not saying. And it seems to me very much like this is what's going on with Khloe. As much as she is like a tell like it is person, she suppresses a lot and doesn't say a lot. In fact, I think she does that more now than she used to when she was younger. And I don't know if some of that is fame or motherhood or what she's going through, but she's showing a lot of signs of like throat chakra blockage. Kim's a little different, I'll get into her later, but there was a really interesting scene early on in the series. There was a really interesting conversation between Khloe and Kim when they were working out in actually, oh my god, the show, with their obsessing with workouts. Khloe's getting terrifying. Like I feel like someone needs to intervene with her, because it's getting terrifying how thin she's getting. Again, the obsessive need for perfection, the work she's getting done on herself. I know we talk about Kylie, but Khloe, who has completely like changed her whole look, and it's getting obsessive. And I feel like I hope someone intervenes with her, because I feel like it's just going down a really dark path, and things are not going to go well for her. But Khloe and Kim are working out, and they start having this revelation that they mother the men that they're with. Mothering a man tends to come from a very masculine place. I have a lot of videos where I get into this much deeper, but oftentimes a woman who's very much in her masculine energy will find a guy who's still in kind of a childlike way, or someone who like needs a mother or who needs guidance, and has not fully stepped into his masculine energy yet, very often that woman will mother him because she'll feel like she needs to control him because he hasn't grown up into an adult. Like, he's an adult man, but he hasn't actually become an adult, like maturity wise, and has not stepped into his masculine. The woman will then feel like she has to enact her masculine, and that tends to look like a mother-child dynamic where she feels like she needs to mother him, to control him, and to care for him like a child. The problem with that is that can get really comfortable at first, and I think a lot of guys may like that at first, especially if there's somebody who needs that kind of attention, someone who hasn't grown up, who's like, hey, this is great, I have someone who will take care of me like a mother, either a mother he never had, or maybe he still hasn't let go of his attachment to his mother, so he finds a woman who is mothering. In the beginning, oftentimes people like that can pair off. The problem is the sexual attraction is going to disappear, because as a woman, you're not going to want to sleep with a guy who you have to treat like a child. That's basic polarity right there. If you as a woman have to constantly be in your masculine, you're gonna stop feeling like a sexual being and you're gonna feel like you're dealing with a child. As a man, because a lot of times men will go along with the sex, but it won't necessarily be something he's drawn to, and he'll start looking for somebody else because that passion isn't there, because your polarity's off. It's not gonna work, right? Like, there's not that heat and passion because you don't have a romantic relationship going. You have more of a parent-child relationship going. So, and Kim kind of comes to this revelation, whether that she's just coming to this revelation on camera or whether or not Khloe mentioning this actually is a light bulb moment for her, we don't really know. But in reality, they kind of come to this conclusion of like, oh my God, it's like we rescue these guys who are still like children and then we mother them. And oftentimes as women, we have that maternal instinct, but if we don't feel like we can relax and be in our feminine energy with a guy, that maternal instinct turns into more of a controlling mother energy. And if you think about it, the pattern with them, I mean, like Lamar had lost his mother at a very young age, and Kanye had lost his mother. Scott was an only child looking for a family. Like, a lot of the guys they get involved with are looking for a family. And because they have this big elaborate family, and these women tend to be more controlling because they take more after their mother, they tend to be more of a controlling energy, so they end up becoming mothers to the men in their life. And this is a very common dynamic, absolutely happening in so many relationships. It's actually a sitcom trope. I mean, if you look at most of the major sitcoms where you have a husband and wife, that's the dynamic in a lot of relationships. Claire and Phil from Modern Family, Ray and Deborah from Everybody Loves Raymond, Jill and Tim from Home Improvement. I mean, it's overwhelmingly the common dynamic of the woman having to be the controlling mother. She gets labeled as a nag, and then you have the husband who's kind of this passive, like just having another child. It's so common in the media today, and it's so common in the world today. I actually just saw a bunch of videos actually recently from some different divorce lawyers talking about the main reason why you're seeing so many women filing for divorce. And it's because so many women feel like they are married single mothers, and they are basically dealing with their husband as another child and not as a grown adult in their relationship. And I think if we don't see a shift in that, I think it's only going to get worse. The reality is, as women, we can only control ourselves. So as women, we need to heal from our need to constantly be in control all the time. That said, if we continue to be in a relationship with someone who refuses to step up and be an adult and actually step into his masculine energy, we're never going to feel safe. And this is where it gets frustrating, because, and this is where I hit a wall a lot of times, especially with my content, because as women, we kind of know the problem. Women in our society are actually very much encouraged to work on ourselves. The whole self-help personal development industry is really targeted so much more to women than it is to men. The reality is, as women, we can work on ourselves, but if men don't do the work to step up, we're never really going to see a shift. It's challenging, and I think, again, if a woman is in controlling energy, I get it. You feel that like, ooh, well, I can fix him because I know what's wrong with him. And it's like, men need to figure that out themselves. Like, they need to do the work on themselves, and they need to want to do that work and do that change. They're gonna need male role models to do that. We can only do so much, and we can heal ourselves. You know, I know it's frustrating. Believe me, I know it's frustrating. I mean, I see it in my parents' dynamic all the time. You know, I see it in, I was in a marriage like that, like such a pattern that repeats itself. It was kind of interesting to see Khloe bringing that up and Kim having the revelation of like, oh my God, we mother these guys. They haven't really done anything about it, but that's just what's going on. Khloe and Tristan, oh boy. There's two different camps that I see of people talking about the Khloe Tristan thing. And the interesting thing is that Tristan is there on the show, on camera, but you don't really get much of him. Like, he's very kind of neutral on the show, like he only shows so much, and so you never really see their dynamic fully. So it's hard to really know exactly what's going on there. But there's two different camps as far as Khloe and her obsession with sort of constantly forgiving Tristan. If any of you don't know the whole Khloe Tristan drama, I'm not going to dive into the ugliness of it here. Google it. He is, you know, cheated on her so many times, very publicly, and with people she was close to. He got another woman pregnant while they were expecting a baby via surrogate. He cheated on her while she was pregnant with her first kid, and actually, like, the stress of it knocked her to early labor. Like, yeah, okay, I just got into it. But anyway, the guy cannot keep it in his pants. And the ironic thing I find is that people attack Khloe because Khloe got with him when he had another woman pregnant. And I'm not encouraging that behavior at all. However, we don't really know what he told Khloe. We don't really know. I mean, obviously this guy is not a good guy at all. I find it interesting how people will be like, oh, well, this is how he is. Obviously he keeps acting like this, so she keeps staying with him. And yes, staying with a man who keeps mistreating you really is a way of allowing him to continue to mistreat you. And I realize, you know, in her situation, she could up and leave. There's a lot of women out there who don't have the option to just up and leave a situation. I want to be mindful that most people are not in the Kardashian level of financial stability and means and things like that. However, if you are staying in a relationship with someone who is mistreating you, I don't believe that gives them permission to mistreat you. However, you are showing that you are accepting of that behavior. So I would encourage anybody who is in a relationship where someone is treating them horribly, humiliating them, disrespecting them, I would highly encourage you to do what you can to figure out how to not be in that situation. I realize that just up and leaving may not always be the safest thing in every situation, but I would encourage that. What she's doing, where she keeps forgiving him, not a good thing. Okay, I know everybody's like, oh, forgiveness is good. She can forgive him and also not have him in her life. Those things can both exist. If she decides to forgive, forget, move on, be like, okay, you're the father of two of my children, I want you to be a father to them, I want you to be in their life, but like, I'm not having you in my life, that's a better move. I find it funny though that everybody acts as if like, well, this is how he is, and everybody's just accepting it, and they'll shame her for putting up with it, but they won't shame him for actually being so disrespectful. I mean, he literally, I don't know, I think he's just scum, but that's beside the point. There's two different camps. There's the camp that believes that Khloe is what I would call wounded feminine. So she doesn't believe in her own self-worth enough to get up and walk away. So she kind of keeps walking back into the belly of the beast. She keeps walking back into this, I would say, abusive situation because he keeps humiliating her publicly. And it's because she doesn't know her own worth. She's not strong and confident enough in herself to step up and walk away. It's what I would call more wounded feminine. There's also the camp that believes she's in what I would call wounded masculine. She needs to be in control. She's latching onto him because she needs to control what he's doing. She won't just let him go and do his thing and be on his own. So she's controlling and manipulating the situation so that he'll stay with her, so she can feel like she still has this man. Like it's a competition for her. Like, oh, he keeps cheating, but I'm gonna win, so I'm gonna make a situation so that he can't leave me, or it's too comfortable for him to up and leave me or something, so that she gets him, so she feels like she's won. Usually when you have these two extremes of like opinion, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. I really do believe that Khloe has serious self-esteem problems. That she absolutely, I mean, the fact that she has sort of lived in her sister's shadow so much, I mean, really all of her sisters. I know people talk about how much they feel for Kylie because she came into this world at such a young age. They feel like the pressures that she had to conform to a certain look were so strong at such a young age that that's why she went this sort of reconstruction of herself route. But I think Khloe has gotten the brunt of the criticism as far as her appearance. She was still quite young. I mean, she wasn't a teenager when they got famous, but she was still quite young. Because she has a very different look than most of the sisters, and I'm not going to get into like who's her father or anything like that because it's really none of our business, but and Khloe's never been overweight. Can we just say Khloe has never, in the entire time they've been famous, ever actually been overweight? And the fact that in the conversation that she had with Kourtney and Kylie about beauty standards, Khloe's literally bashing herself. And Kourtney's trying to be like, Khloe, you were never that big. Like, you were never that big. You didn't look bad. And she's like, yes, absolutely. I look terrible. I don't know who let me out of the house looking like I did. Like, she just literally bashes herself all the time. I think Khloe has gotten the brunt of the criticism about her physical appearance. I know she tries to play like she was never insecure before, like growing up and stuff, but I don't buy that. I really don't buy that at all. Because the way she's acting is not like somebody who grew up not feeling insecure. So I do think that there is an absolute feeling of not feeling worthy of being treated properly, and that's why she gets into these relationships. I mean, Lamar very publicly had an addiction issue, which I'm gonna actually get into some things about addiction and stuff like that because that comes up a lot with the men in their lives a little bit later. But I mean, I do think Lamar actually really loves her, but he could not show up as a good partner for her, and she put up with it for a long time now. She was married to him. I do think she really loved him. She probably still does, but the reality of the situation is that she consistently puts herself in relationships with men who don't treat her as if she's worthy of love. And I'm sure the root of that is because she doesn't feel worthy of love. That is her wounded feminine. She is also in her wounded masculine because she does feel that competition. And the combination of the wounded masculine of like needing to feel overly controlling, needing to feel like you need the situation to go exactly the way you need the situation to go because that's how you have a sense of control, typically rooted in anxiety, which I think she's talked about having before. When you have that wounded masculine with that obsessive need for control because you're just afraid of not being in control of things, and then you have that wounded feminine of not feeling worthy, that combination can be really destructive, which is one of the reasons why I worry about Khloe a lot, because I just feel like, oof, she's on a path to some bad stuff. It becomes this sense of like, I'm gonna control this man by being as much of a martyr as I possibly can be, because she doesn't feel worthy of being treated well, so she's gonna fight for the person that is treating her badly. She wants that control, but yet she doesn't feel worthy of actually being in a good situation, so she's overly controlling of a situation that's actually bad for her. It's a really destructive pattern. It's that I'm gonna let myself get abused and I'm gonna prove that I'm the one he should be with because I can endure the most pain and the most suffering. It's a real martyr mentality, and it's really dangerous to be in. I've witnessed this dynamic in people, so I've been close to it, so I've seen it happening. It's almost this idea of like, if I can suffer the most, he'll choose me. And it's rooted in a lack of self-worth, but it's also rooted in a need to be in control and that competition of trying to win. Both sides of the camp that are judging Khloe are right, really, but it really is kind of a combination of the two that's putting her in this situation. She started getting a lot more work done on herself to change her appearance and get this way as she's being cheated on. Because in her mind, I believe she's thinking, if I could just make myself better, if I could just make myself more attractive, if I could make myself sexier, if I could make myself, like if I can change myself. Plus now she's got 2 kids. The other women that he has kids with only have 1 with him. So it's like, it's this constantly trying to be chosen by him, and it's trying to be chosen by someone who's not even worth her choosing, for God's sakes. I mean, that's the problem, and it's this really sad dynamic of just being in this very wounded feminine and this very wounded masculine combination that is just really, to me it's painful to watch. And the way I read it is she doesn't want to talk about her feelings. She doesn't want to express how the things he's doing makes her feel, because at this point, I think she sees the world blaming her. So she sees the world judging her decisions. So it's like, well, I'm not going to talk about it, because if I talk about it, people are just going to judge me anyway. So if I just don't talk about it, then I don't have to deal with it. Like, I think that's what's going on with her. And she's suppressing this stuff. She's pushing this stuff down. I really do believe that's why she was having issues with, you know, her facial area. She just throws herself into this obsession with losing weight, this obsession with judging her old body, which Khloe was never overweight. She was never in an unhealthy weight for someone who is her height. She's incredibly tall. She was never overweight at all. She was just big compared to her sisters and compared to the mainstream beauty standard. And I think she judged herself for that. And that's why she doesn't even look like herself anymore. And it's just so sad to watch someone go through that. So that's my 2 cents on the Khloe situation. The whole thing with her and Tristan, it just breaks my heart. I know she stays in it and she keeps accepting it, but it kills me, because I know where it's coming from with her. It's like watching a train wreck, where it's like, you know, things are gonna go really bad, but you just, you know, can't not watch, I guess. Kim. Kim, you don't really see a lot of her dynamic with Kanye on the show, and I will admit Kanye's kind of like lost his mind a bit. I think I probably mentioned in the last video, Kanye to me is the very definition of, there's a fine line between genius and insanity. Like, I think Kanye's actually a genius, like as far as like artistic creativity. I also think he's insane, and I think he'd admit that too. I think Kanye's another one that, because he is a more artistic person, because he kind of lives in a bit of a dreamland, Kim was the masculine energy in that relationship, and you know, Kim is very masculine. I don't know if that's her core energy or not. It's hard to know. She seems to be happy in her masculine energy. She uses it all the time. And I know some people are gonna say that's surprising, because Kim has kind of been touted as like the feminine ideal look, but her energy is very masculine. She is a very, very masculine woman. Everything about her is structure. She focuses on her work, her businesses. I'm not saying it's wrong for her to have those things, but you can tell based on the show that she uses those things as a way to distract herself from her feelings, from her emotions, from anything she's dealing with in life. It's like, oh, going through a breakup, let's start a business. Oh, going through a breakup, well, let's take on way too much work. Like she even admits it on the show, that she just constantly needs to be doing something. Doing is masculine. And I realize that what she does for work, being filmed doing things all the time, like being, you know, sitting there and getting her hair and makeup done, like I realize that her work is questionable. However, it's a constant need to be doing something. And oh my God, her obsession with trying to fit into Marilyn Monroe's dress, which, first of all, huge Marilyn Monroe fan. So, I mean, I get the obsession of wanting to fit into her dress. What she was doing, and this obsession with like, I'm training for this moment. Like, and she kept justifying it like, you know, she's like an actress training for a role, but her role was only gonna be like 5 minutes or something like that. Like the way she was forcing herself to lose this weight, to conform her body, the way that she was bragging about manipulating her body and things like that is a very masculine mindset. I have a whole video where I talk about masculine and feminine myths when it comes to fitness and stuff, so I'll dive into that more. I'm not going to get into the nuance. I'm not saying you can't lift weights and be feminine. I'm not saying you can't work out and be feminine. That's not what I'm talking about. But the way that she approaches this obsession with manipulating her body is a very masculine mindset. It's that needing to control. You see it in very wounded masculine men feeling a need to control everything about a woman. It's like Kim is doing that, but to herself. She is a controlling, domineering masculine partner, but to herself. With Kim, again, you never know if what she's presenting to us is actual reality, but she is so masculine. And I think even watching the last 3 seasons of this series, it's even more evident how unbelievably masculine she is. She's like refusing to actually deal with any feelings and emotions. Kourtney's my favorite character, to be honest. I love Kourtney. I do. I've always had a special place in my heart for Kourtney. Kourtney's been through a lot of stuff. I'm not going to say that Kourtney has never been in her masculine energy. She absolutely has been over the course of her time in the spotlight. But Kourtney is the most feminine of all of the sisters. And Kourtney really, I mean, I think when she was younger, she was very closed off. She didn't show emotion, or she tried really hard not to show emotion. And I think a big part of that was because she was in a relationship with Scott, and I'm not gonna dive into Scott too much here, but Scott was an addict. I'm gonna get into addiction in a minute, but he was very unstable, very childlike. She had to mother him. That was the dynamic they had. I think she felt like she had to be in control because she didn't have a partner who she could rely on so that she could relax. And that was always an issue with the two of them, because he wanted more from her. He wanted her to show how she was feeling. He wanted more of her feminine side, but he also wasn't creating an environment that made it okay for her to show that side of herself, or that she could feel safe to do that. So Kourtney, and I know she's been doing a lot of therapy, a lot of inner work, and a lot of things like that, she's really been tapping into her feminine energy, and I think it's really showing. And I think that's where you're seeing so much conflict with her and her sisters, because her tapping into her feminine energy is actually a threat to the other sisters, because the other sisters have really set up this world where being in your masculine is the right thing to do. Like, I don't think that Kim actually thinks that there's any other way to be other than the way that she is, and other than being in that very masculine, structured, controlling, all about business, all about work. Relationships and things like that, they fall to the side. I don't really want to deal with them. They're really just for show anyway, that kind of thing. Kourtney is tapping into her feminine, and that's a threat to the other sisters, because it's against what their belief system has been, which is being in your masculine is the right thing to do. And I think most of them, like, I don't even know. I mean, Kim really does not show any feminine energy whatsoever, unless it's off camera or something. Khloe is in very wounded feminine and is rejecting any healthy feminine, because it's just not, I don't think she thinks it's safe for her. I think Kendall needs to tap into her feminine energy, because I think her anxiety is gonna cripple her at some point if she doesn't, but I don't think she knows it's okay to. And Kylie has got this obsession with a physical perfection and stuff that Kourtney tapping into her feminine is just not something that they can relate to at all. You see it so much with, like, Kourtney prioritizes family. She prioritizes her personal relationships. And it's not that she doesn't have businesses and she doesn't actually do a lot of the same stuff the sisters do. She shows up to film. She, you know, she has her brands that she does. She has Poosh, and I think she has her vitamin brand Lemmy. Granted, she's not growing them as big and promoting them as much as, say, like, you know, some of Kim's brands or things like that. But it's because it's not her main priority. It's just not, and that's okay. That's a big thing that comes up with Kourtney and Kim so much, is that with Kim, she wants it to be all about business, and Kourtney wants her businesses to support the life that she has with her kids and with her family and now with her new husband. Kim doesn't understand that dynamic, because for Kim, the masculine mindset of business and passion and purpose and what she wants to do with her life is always number one, and the other stuff is always after that. Whereas with Kourtney, she wants to be a mom, she wants to have a family, and if she does have businesses, those are secondary. And in reality, her businesses may not be as successful as Kim's because of that dynamic, but Kourtney is okay with that. And Kim does not understand why Kourtney isn't okay with that. And I think one of the reasons, and Kourtney's even said it at one point when she was actually getting ready to promote her supplement brand, Lemmy, I think is what it's called. Kourtney said that it took her so long to get this business going, partly because she was judging herself so much, because Kim had all this pressure on her to, like, get the business going, to be in business, to have a business, to have all these different things going. And Kourtney just doesn't seem like she wants her life to be cluttered with all kinds of business meetings and all kinds of responsibilities. She wants to be a mom. She wants to be in her feminine. She wants to be able to relax. She feels so much judgment from her family that it kind of puts her in freeze mode. I think Kourtney goes into freeze mode sometimes when it comes to some of this stuff, because it's like, oh, well, if I do something, or I do put effort into this, it's not going to be as good as Kim, because she's not dedicating her whole life to this stuff like Kim is. In fact, a lot of their fights, Kourtney and Kim, like towards the end of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, were usually Kim making digs at Kourtney for not working hard enough, and Kourtney trying to be like, hey, I've chosen the life that I'm choosing, but don't judge me because I show up when I need to, or, like, you know, I have different priorities than you. It doesn't make me wrong. And I think a lot of that is because Kim is threatened by the fact that somebody else may be getting fulfillment in something other than business. And I'm not saying that women can't have businesses or career goals or anything like that. You can be a feminine woman, you can have all those things if you want to have those things. However, for most women, seeking business success, career success is never going to feel completely fulfilled. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a husband and a family or anything, but for most feminine women, no matter how much money and success you have, it's never going to feel fully fulfilling if they don't have some kind of personal relationships in their life, because the feminine is going to value community and connection over passion and purpose, whereas the masculine is going to value passion and purpose over community and connection. It's not that either of those things are wrong, really, and if Kim does feel more fulfilled in her passion and purpose than she is in community and connection, it's not that there's really anything wrong with that. It's just the fact that she is so angry that Kourtney thinks differently, and that she so has to dig at Kourtney all the time and judge Kourtney and shame Kourtney for the choices that Kourtney's made, leads me to believe that she may not actually be as happy as she's trying to make everybody think that she is. It would just be like, okay, Kourtney's got that priority and Kourtney's doing her thing, and it really wouldn't matter to Kim at all. Some interesting things when it comes to the Kim-Kourtney dynamic. You see it also in the situation where they're all gonna make like a Christmas album. If you notice, Kourtney is so okay with making a fool of herself, and that's one of the things I love about her. She is so okay with, I don't know, having a few drinks and like singing off key, and she just doesn't care. And when they tell her she's off key or they tell her it's like whatever. Like, Kourtney is so okay with not being perfect, and I love that about her. She's so okay with just embracing life as it goes, and I love that about her. Like, she's okay with her imperfections. She doesn't feel like she needs to be great at everything. Whereas they're trying to film the Christmas album, and Kim is like trying to get, like, I think it was Babyface on the phone to like produce a song so she could do a song and have it be perfect and everything. It's that obsession with perfection. Like, she cannot be in her feminine and go with the flow. She's incapable of doing that. Whereas Kourtney is so like, let's just show up, let's have a good time, let's have fun, and just enjoy life. And oh, it's so clear that Kourtney is ready to be in her feminine era right now. Now, the Kourtney and Travis dynamic, I'm really conflicted about. Something is off there for me, and I don't 100% know what it is, but something feels off. I hope that Kourtney has found her partner. I hope that Kourtney lives happily ever after. I hope that, you know, she's having a baby with Travis. I hope that they all are a happy family. I hope good things for her. I really do. But something feels off to me about their dynamic. One thing is that he doesn't seem like a very grounded masculine character. The fact that he has fears of flying, which I understand, like he was in a plane crash, like that's all understandable. But the fact that she has to be so comforting of him, they could easily fall into mother-child dynamics. He doesn't seem like a very like grounded masculine man. Maybe he is. He doesn't come across that way to me. So I feel like her feminine flowiness, it's like he's either gonna have to step up into a more masculine structure, or else they're gonna lose polarity. And the fact that they don't come across to me like a very polarized couple, but yet they can't keep their hands off each other all the time, and they kind of almost like resent when they're in a situation where they can't keep their hands on each other all the time, feels to me like they're forcing something that may not actually be there. It just feels off to me, and I don't necessarily know specifically why. And I think part of it is because I don't think that we're seeing the wholeness of their dynamic, because I think that as much as they're on the show, I still think they're trying to keep a lot of stuff private, which I understand. Like, I'm not judging them for that. I can't really pinpoint what's off for me. And I know there's all this stuff about how he had an obsession with Kim, and, you know, people think that there's resentment there. I don't really know. It just feels off. I will say though, I fully believe there's a reason why she's with him. And there's one scene, it's a really small scene in the show, I think it's in season 1, that to me symbolizes the reason why she's with Travis in the first place. It's just summed up in this whole scene. You know, she was with Scott for so long. Scott was so erratic. He was so unstable. But there's a scene in the first season when Kourtney and Travis are getting ready to have Kourtney's mother over for dinner. They had turned on the hot tub, and they were gonna check and see if the temperature in the hot tub was warm, because like after dinner, Kourtney and Travis were gonna use their hot tub. And Kourtney goes over to like reach into the hot tub to see what the temperature is, and Travis goes to kind of like stand beside her, and she tenses up, kind of like, oh, don't throw me in. And he's like, I'm not going to throw you in. Like, I'm holding on to you to make sure you don't fall in. She makes a comment to him about, you're the only person in my life that would not have thrown me in the pool right now. And that's really symbolic. Travis is the only person in Kourtney's life that she doesn't have to be in fight or flight around. She still is tense because in reality, if you watch the whole show, they throw each other in pools a lot. They attack each other a lot. Like, Kourtney has always had to be in fight or flight, and especially with Scott because he was so erratic and everything. The fact that with Travis, like, she's still tense, but he's like, I'm not gonna throw you in. I wanna make sure you're okay. He's retraining her nervous system to be more relaxed. And I really do believe that's the main reason why she's with Travis. Now, does that automatically mean that the two of them are going to be compatible long term? Only time will tell. I don't know that. I still think that there's something a little off about their relationship, but that is likely the reason why Kourtney is with him, because he is probably the first person in her life, maybe ever, that has allowed her nervous system to start resetting, to calm down, that is showing up in a way that she is not having to be in fight or flight mode all the time. And I really do believe that's the reason why they're together. And the reality is, you can't connect to your feminine energy if you're in fight or flight mode all the time. Fight or flight mode, well, as humans, we're all capable of being in fight or flight. It's a survival skill. We need that fight or flight. However, masculine beings, primarily men, are much more capable of being in fight or flight for long periods of time. It's why men tend to be hunters, tend to be soldiers, things like that. Women are capable of being in fight or flight because we need to be for survival. But if a woman is always in survival mode, so she has to constantly be in fight or flight, typically she's going to start seeing health problems, hormonal imbalances, anxiety issues, mental health issues, things like that. Women are not supposed to be in fight or flight mode all the time. So when we are in a position where we have to be in fight or flight mode all the time, our nervous system then gets jacked up. We start having a lot of, you know, usually physical, mental health problems, and usually we can't connect to our feminine energy, because being in your feminine energy usually means you have to have a relaxed nervous system, and you can't be in that when you're in fight or flight mode all the time. I really do think that being in this relationship is going to be really helpful for Kourtney to connect her feminine energy. The fact that Travis seems to go along with, like, they did this big long spa day thing when she was trying to get pregnant. It was this big like fertility thing. He went along with it because he's being supportive of her. I don't know if it's something that he's super into. Like, I know he's vegan, but I don't know if he's really into a lot of the like holistic and sort of spiritual stuff that Kourtney's getting more into, but he never judged her for it. Like, he never judged her for this on camera. He went along with it. Which, you know, that, like, I mean, Scott might have gone along with stuff on camera, but he also would have made jokes about it. He would have kind of, you know, made some judgments. And I'm not trying to attack Scott. I mean, I think Scott was going through his own stuff in life. I can see where Kourtney would feel like this relationship was so much safer. And again, whether or not they work out long term, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. It does feel a little off to me, but I see why this relationship would be more appealing to Kourtney, especially in this stage in her life. So there's the conversation that happened in the first episode of season 4, and I'm just gonna touch on this a little bit because I have some things I want to talk about around this conversation. If you want me to do a recap of season 4 when it's over, let me know, leave a comment, and I'll talk about it. In the conversation where Kim and Kourtney are arguing, Kim keeps trying to bring up business, clothes, things that are not part of her emotions, because Kim doesn't want to deal with her emotions. She doesn't like her emotions. She doesn't really like connection. She doesn't like having a personal connection with someone. Kourtney wants to have a deep conversation and wants to have connection. She wants to talk about things that are deeper. She wants to talk about relational things, feelings, things like that, because Kim's still in her masculine, Kourtney's still in her feminine. And Kourtney, when she realizes she cannot get through to Kim, very frequently gets really emotional and loses it, which very often happens with someone who is very feminine at their core when they're dealing with someone that they just cannot break through to, especially if it's someone that they are really desiring to have a relationship with. And I think Kourtney really wants to have a better relationship with Kim. I think she's just coming up against a wall with Kim because Kim just does not want to deal with personal emotions and things like that. Kourtney calls Kim a narcissist, and there's a lot of arguments in favor of, you know, Kim being a narcissist. I want to kind of talk about something that's not specifically Kardashian related, although you can compare it, I think, to a lot of the stuff going on with narcissism and a lot of addictions. Not with the girls themselves. We know Lamar has had addiction problems. We know that Scott has had addiction problems. I know Kanye's been on mental health medications. I don't know if he's actually confessed to specific addictions or not, so I don't want to make assumptions about that. You can make the argument that Tristan has like a sex or lust addiction or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't see how somebody could possibly be in his situation and not, but you know, I don't know. These girls do tend to get involved with men who have addiction issues, and the fact that we're throwing around narcissists and stuff, there's something that's been coming up a lot on social media that I kind of wanted to address in terms of narcissism, addiction, things like that. So I've seen a lot of people say that we overuse the word narcissist. They're probably correct. However, I'm of two minds when it comes to this. On the one hand, it's great that we're finally talking about narcissism. It's great that we're talking about narcissistic personality disorder specifically is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about somebody who just like takes a lot of selfies or like likes to look at themselves in the mirror or someone who loves themselves or anything like that. When I talk about narcissism, I'm talking about narcissistic personality disorder. It's an actual disorder. If you look it up, there actually is a list of qualities that a person exhibits if they have narcissistic personality disorder, and a person has to have a certain percentage of those qualities in order to qualify as to be diagnosed as a narcissist. Most of us have some narcissistic qualities here or there, but we don't have enough of them to qualify us as being an actual narcissist. The reality of the situation is that I love that we are talking about it more, because I think information needs to be out there, because the more information people have, the better they can protect themselves from potentially getting into narcissistic relationships or dealing with people who are narcissistic or knowing how to deal with those situations. And I think that information is really important to be out there. I do agree that oftentimes we jump to blaming narcissism on everything, and that's not a healthy thing. So again, I'm of two minds when it comes to this stuff. One of the arguments I've seen is that there actually is a very small percentage of the population that has narcissistic personality disorder. I don't know if there's an official number, and I feel like that would be something that would be really hard to measure specifically. I've seen people say like 1% to 2%, which is absolutely, definitely not accurate, because I'm pretty sure 4% of the population are actually sociopaths, and I'm sure that there's a higher percentage of the population who are narcissists. So I don't know what the actual numbers on that are. Probably most of the people that you've had interactions with that you may suspect are narcissists, a lot of them may not be. There's a caveat to that that I'll get to in a minute. I will also say that the research has shown that 80% of narcissists are men. Not 80% of men are narcissists, but 80% of narcissists are men. The fact that I hear so many people complaining about narcissistic mothers or men complaining about narcissistic ex-girlfriends, if you're complaining about that many women in your life being narcissists, then the chances are that you've met even more people that are men who are narcissists. And one of the theories that I have heard, because I've done a lot of research about this topic from people who study this stuff extensively, like not just like online memes, but like people who actually have gotten PhDs and stuff in psychology, focusing on narcissistic studies and things like that. The reality is we as a society accept many narcissistic qualities in men more than we accept them in women. So when we're starting to label people as narcissists and we're labeling women can be narcissists, they absolutely can be. However, it's much more likely that you're dealing with male narcissists than dealing with female narcissists, because statistically speaking, there are a lot more male narcissists than female narcissists. There is a phenomenon, and I see it too, where you start seeing narcissism in everyone. And I've personally even seen it where it's like overwhelming the amount of people who exhibit narcissistic personality disorder qualities. And one of the things that I learned in doing my research about this topic is that, and I've heard this from several different experts, is that if somebody has an addiction and they're actively in their addiction, like not someone who is clean and sober, but they're actively using, like they're actively in their addiction process, like they have not gotten clean and sober, they have not worked in their addiction, they're literally like actively in their addiction, they will exhibit the exact same qualities as a person with narcissistic personality disorder. If you are in relationship with someone who is an addict, the experience for you will feel the exact same as if you were dealing with someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. The reality of the world today is that while we have more help for people who have your sort of stereotypical addictions like drugs and alcohol, there's more access to help for those people than there has ever been in history. We have more things that people are addicted to now than ever in history, just because of the way our world is set up. There's just more things in our society that people have grown addicted to. And there are some addictions that we didn't really know about that have kind of come to light or come to the surface. I'm sure things like sex addiction have probably been around forever, but we know more about it now. But there's also so many things, like so much more access to gambling that I think you're gonna see, especially with it becoming so legalized now, you're gonna see a huge increase in gambling addiction and things like that. Online shopping absolutely has contributed to people dealing with spending addictions and things. I mean, there's so much more access that people have to different addictive things. We're seeing an absolute overwhelming number of people who are actually dealing with addictions, and people who are not even actually accepting that they are addicted, because I know personally a lot of people who think, well, I don't do drugs and I don't use alcohol, so I must not be an addict, and that's just not how it works. One of the realities, and I think we've seen this too with so many of the relationships that like the Kardashians have been in, you know, Lamar, Scott, and it's a reality I know I've had to come to terms with because it's a hard reality to face. If a person is actively in an addiction, you cannot be in a relationship with them because they cannot show up as a loving partner, because their addiction runs the show. Their addiction is always what they're going to be devoted to. So they cannot be a devoted partner to you. And this goes for romantic relationships, this goes for friends, family, work, anything. You cannot be in a relationship with a person who is an addict, because the addiction runs the show. They cannot be a devoted partner, friend, parent, child. They cannot be in a true intimate relationship with you if their addiction is running the show. And that's true for men or women. But one thing we need to sit with is the fact that, and I've heard various numbers when it comes to this statistic, so I'm going to go with the low end. The low end number that I have heard, and I believe it's higher, but the low end number is that 76% of men are addicted to porn with a capital P. That's low end. Most people believe it's higher. So that means that at least 76% of men are incapable of showing up and having a healthy, loving relationship. And that's just factoring in one addiction, okay, which is obviously like rampant, and I think it's one that we don't talk about nearly enough. So when we talk about the concept of like the male loneliness epidemic, or the number of men that are not getting into relationships or things like that, like we have to look at that. It's not a stat we can ignore. And that's only factoring in that one type of addiction, okay? And that type of addiction primarily affects men. It can affect women, but it's much, much, much less common in women to have that type of addiction. So there's other addictions that women have to deal with for sure, so I'm not dismissing any of that. But the fact that we've literally created a society where that many men are incapable of actually having a relationship, and because people who are in addictions exhibit the exact same qualities as a narcissist, you're seeing women who are experiencing what it's like to be in a narcissistic relationship with the vast majority of men that they meet in the world today. And unfortunately, as women, we can't fix this problem. Men have to be the one to fix that problem. As women, all we can do is work on ourselves. Like, all we can do is work on, if we have addictions or if we have any kind of narcissistic or behavioral tendencies or things like that that we want to work on within ourselves, we can work on that, and we should work on that, because everybody really should be working on themselves. I mean, I think that's a really important thing that we should be doing as humans, is to work on ourselves, you know, to try to be the best versions of ourselves. But in reality, we can't fix other people. And until men are willing to step up and face, I mean, any of their addictions really, but I'm telling you, porn addiction, it's affecting so many men. And this isn't a video about that, it's more about the Kardashians. I just really wanted to throw in the topic of narcissism and the topics of addiction into this conversation because I think it's an important one. And because we have seen in the Kardashians' relationships that when they had partners with addictions, how destructive it got. Anyone who's dealt with anyone who has an addiction problem knows that that person needs to want to fix it, and they have to fix it for themselves. I know there's probably gonna be a lot of people who don't like this, who think I'm judging them, who are being like, oh, it's not that big a deal, it's not. No. If you're with someone who has an addiction, you cannot have a healthy relationship with a person who's an addict. It will feel the same as if you were in a narcissistic, abusive relationship. Doesn't mean that all addicts are narcissists. It means that all addicts exhibit the qualities of a narcissist when they're in their addiction. If a person gets sober and clean from their addiction, that's when you know whether or not they're actually a narcissist or whether they aren't. Because if a person gets clean and sober and they don't have narcissistic personality disorder, they will likely be capable of having a relationship. They'll be capable of empathy, like they'll be capable of all the things that a narcissist wouldn't be capable of. If a person is clean and sober and they still exhibit all the signs of having a narcissistic personality disorder, then you know they're a narcissist. I will say, it is very likely for narcissists to become addicts, but it is not true that all addicts are actually narcissists. But when someone is in their addiction and not managing their addiction, it will feel to the person that is in a relationship with them, it will feel the same as being in a relationship with a narcissist, because the addiction runs the show. They cannot show up in love for somebody else because the addiction will always be what controls them. It's a hard lesson I had to learn. It seems like Kourtney has had to learn that lesson. Khloe, I think, had to deal with it, but I don't think she's actually really faced it or actually dealt with it. Kim doesn't appear to have an addiction problem. People could argue she's addicted to the attention, but in reality, for women, for the feminine, because we are the ones who are seen, wanting attention is normal for us. Wanting attention is normal. In the same way that for men, wanting sex is normal. It's just a matter of degree. And I think, again, in the same way that if men are chasing superficial sex with multiple partners all the time and it then becomes an addiction, it's an unhealthy addiction. Whereas for women, if you're chasing attention at any cost, if you are basically only settling for superficial attention and you're willing to actually put yourself in danger potentially to get that, then you could argue that it's an addiction. For Kim, while I do think that she needs the attention and she does need to be the center of attention and that is part of her personality, her obsessive need to be doing all the time and the fact that she cannot accept that somebody else may not be the way that she is signs that she's probably a narcissist. Because if somebody is a certain way and they're not a narcissist, they can accept the fact that someone else may not be the way that they are. And they may get frustrated if the way that person is actually like negatively affecting their life and stuff, but if somebody is a narcissist, they're much more likely to actually like have a serious problem with somebody else not being the way that they're being, even if it doesn't affect them in any way. Because to them, everything affects them because everything is about them, right? I have a video talking about how narcissism can affect a person's feminine energy. It's a very popular video. A lot of people have said it's really helpful, so I highly recommend you check out that video. I have a video about Pete Davidson. I still stand by the fact that the whole Pete thing was just staged. I absolutely believe that whole thing was PR. I don't believe that Kim and Pete were ever really a couple. I mean, maybe they slept together while they were doing this whole PR stunt or whatever, but I don't believe they were ever really a couple. I actually don't believe, based on what we're seeing now of Kim, that she would even actually be capable of having an intimate relationship with someone. If she's a narcissist, she absolutely would not be able to. I don't know if she is. She exhibits a lot of signs of being a narcissist. So if that's the case, she wouldn't be able to. If it's just because she's so blocked off from having that and she's actually just drowning herself in her work, which is very common with women today. It doesn't mean they're narcissists. It just means that they're rejecting personal relationships because they have such a wall up to protect them. If that's the case, it's going to be really difficult for her to have a personal relationship with somebody else. Not impossible, but she would need to do a lot of work on herself. And it doesn't seem like Kim is interested in doing work on herself, which is ironic because she's so about herself. Like, she's all about herself. So you would think that something like therapy would actually be something she would love because she'd get to talk about herself the whole time. But the fact that she doesn't want to do those things because she doesn't want to face those things, again, lends itself a little bit to narcissism because narcissists cannot handle therapy. So if you guys have any thoughts on the Kardashian dynamic, this was just about the first 3 seasons of the Kardashians on Hulu, and if you guys have any thoughts on them, their dynamic, things like that, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Any video topic ideas, probably not film breakdowns because I'm gonna have to put those on hold for a while, but any other topics or things like that you'd like me to talk about, let me know. Also, let me know if you want me to do a kind of a breakdown like this of season 4 of the Kardashians once it's over. I'll definitely do that if you guys are interested. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Follow me on all my social media accounts, including my new TikTok. The links will be in the description box below. I have an exciting project coming up that I've been working on that I'm so excited to share with you guys, hopefully soon. So be sure you stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.